Donald Trump has just done something unprecedented. I'm sure many of you have been following his trade tariff wars, but he's actually taken a stance that, if executed, will be unprecedented even within the trade tariff wars. Now, I don't see many people talking about this, and in my opinion, it's pretty sinister, and I would even go as far as to call it neo-colonial, which is why it's very important that Africa pays attention to what's happening right now. In this video, I'm going to break all of this down. And of course, if you're interested in the betterment of Africa, I suggest you pay close attention. For those of you that don't know me, my name is TJ. I'm Nigerian and British mixed. And on this channel, we talk about African geopolitics. So the specifics of what Trump has actually done is regarding the nation of Brazil. He's just announced that he's going to hit them with a 50% tariff. And the reasoning behind this is not because of trade back and forth, but it's actually a political reason domestically happening within Brazil that has nothing to do with trade. So from all accounts, there is a Brazilian politician that made a coup attempt in order to gain power and take over from the current president, Lula. This politician is former President Bolsonaro. Currently, Bolsonaro is going through the legal proceedings under trial based on his participation in this coup. And Donald Trump is calling this persecution. He's then taking his position on tariffs, adding 50% based on his disagreement with a domestic situation happening in Brazil. This is unprecedented. And if the penny has not dropped yet, this means he's now weaponizing the tariffs in order to manipulate the leadership of a country. Now, we know that America has a history of doing this through the military, through the CIA. And now, I want to reiterate, this is an unprecedented move. It's never been done through tariff manipulation.
The main thing is the reciprocity law passed by Congress. And there's no doubt that first we'll try to negotiate, but if there's no negotiation, the reciprocity law will be put into practice. If he charges us 50%, we'll charge him 50%.
On the continent of Africa, which is filled with countries that often have many struggles and fights with leadership, coups, voting fraud, and the list goes on, this could be significant in how America deals with African countries in terms of their leadership. For example, coming up in October, we have the presidential elections coming up for the Ivory Coast. But this could be applied to any country. And in fact, it could be applied even outside of the context of a political election season. Now, I want you to recognize what this means in the context of the meeting Donald Trump just had at the White House. Remember, 5 African leaders were invited to the White House, and I already made a video about how embarrassing that meeting was. But that aside, the president of Gabon, President Nguma, is himself a military coup president. He took power via a military coup. He ran elections after that military coup where he won by a 90% plus landslide, which many of us could speculate probably has some fiddling going on at the polls. It shows that Trump doesn't have any qualms about who gets to power, how they got to power, or whatever. He doesn't have any qualms about freedoms that America is always saying they defend so strongly. And we could say this is a double-edged sword. It's yet to play out for us to find out if Nguma himself is a positive president for the continent of Africa or not. He's the one president at the White House meeting that actually said something of some semblance of quality to Donald Trump regarding materials needing to be processed by the countries themselves rather than just exporting raw minerals.
We also want our raw materials to be processed locally in our countries so that we can create value and to create jobs for youth so that they stop dying. They are crossing the sea, the ocean to go to other countries. That is what we want, to have local processing of raw materials.
And just like a double-edged sword suggests, he also said he would nominate Donald Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize, which I think in particular is off-brand. If you want to see the full details of that and you haven't seen my video on the meeting yet, please go ahead and check that out on my channel. But this type of leader benefits Trump very much. If Trump can get this guy on side, can get him to be a puppet leader, to get him to be a leader that benefits himself as an individual and America as a country over the people of the nation, all very well, Trump can win. But if he can't, he can use the way this president got to power to then do this tariff move, make this manipulation, and make his efforts to remove him from power. And that's aside from a military takeover, CIA, covert operation, or something like that. Remember, the Brazilian situation, he's also backing someone. This is a whole lot of geopolitical chess that we're watching here. And it's yet to be seen what the true outcomes are going to be. The message this action takes is clear. It's not about how you trade. It's about how you act in general. Any political position could now be used to justify crippling trade tariffs. Now, in the case of Brazil, there's actually an interesting dynamic with this, and we're going to have to watch this closely. Brazil has a trade deficit with the United States, meaning the United States sells more stuff to Brazil than Brazil sells to the United States, which means Brazil is actually in a position to put reciprocal taxes in place. And so the tariff war rages on, and we're going to have to see how that shakes out. Now, there's 5 countries in Africa that are in that position. These are Egypt, Morocco, Seychelles, Somalia, and the one and only Burkina Faso, with Ibrahim Traore at the helm. But you will notice from that list is missing several heavy-hitting African countries: Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, Kenya, Angola, Uganda, the list goes on. These countries are potentially at even greater risk because they might not have the trade ability to fight back with reciprocal tariffs. Now, this could be an oversimplification because the minerals, the resources, the agricultural products that a lot of these countries supply are very much needed in the United States. So it's not necessarily whether you're in a deficit or not that's going to determine whether this thing is dangerous for you. There are certain commodities that are found in other places, but not in the same abundance level as in Africa. For example, in particular, Ghana controls a big percentage of the world's cocoa. So if this suddenly shut down because of tariff rates, it could still harm the United States. But imagine this scenario. A president is in place that Donald Trump and America don't like. Donald Trump hits that president with really high tariffs because of some domestic policy. We can pick one out of the sky and say this president's unwillingness to provide contracts for mining, for example. Well, now Trump has the motivation to back the opposition. He can do it through the CIA, the military, but now he can do it through the tariffs. So he hits that country with a 50% tariff on a key commodity that country is exporting. As a result, the economy is greatly crushed by that country. And then you have an upstart that could say, I have a deal in place with Trump that is going to put those tariffs back to normal levels, and we can open up trade with America again. What happens? That person convinces the population or performs a military coup. They take over and then proceeds to give mining contracts to American companies. Now we've come full circle and the resource extraction process is underway. Now, I think this is something that many countries around the world is watching really closely. Why? Because they are seeing massive uncertainty at the moment. It's playing out in the stock market. It's playing out in the currency markets. Everyone wants to know how this trade war is going to shake out. But this is actually having a positive effect, in a way, on Africa. Why? Because Africa is now seeking new trade partners, and it's likely having the adverse effect that Donald Trump wants regarding the BRICS nations. As I mentioned in a previous video, the BRICS nations are setting up the new development bank, giving every country in BRICS and their partners the ability to trade outside the context of the United States dollar. This in itself would be a devastating blow to the American economy if America was to lose this position as the global reserve currency. The US debt is already massive and will become crippling. And if this trend continues, more people will be attracted to this method like a magnet, speeding up the demise of the American empire altogether. And this is where we talk about the multipolar world, a world where it's not just one dominant power in charge, but several. So this is a period of uncertainty that the world may need to go through in order to navigate to this other shore of not being reliant on the US dollar, the US manipulation, the US system in order to trade and interact across the world. I think if you could get every African president in a room and offer them this deal to not have to trade in dollars, they would take it. After all, it's a more independent path. I mean, this applies to the presidents that are not puppets, at least. This is actually an incredible time in Africa's history. We are going to have to see how this plays out over the next 5-10 years. And it's not a matter of if the United States is going to diminish and we move to this multipolar world, but it's a matter of when. I just hope that this transition will not be too turbulent for the people. The thing that truly amazes me about all of this is that America goes to great pains to talk about how bad China's Belt and Road Initiative is. But this tariff manipulation is another clear example of something that China does not do nefariously. We've just seen China remove all tariffs from nearly every African nation on the continent when it comes to trade. This is a stark difference. Why wouldn't Africa run to the arms of China with such a situation? And this potentially is going to start a flywheel because Africa is going to do more trade with China and China is going to do more trade with Africa. The economies of Africa are going to build along with the 1.4 billion people on the continent of Africa that are going to multiply to 3 billion by 2030 to 2050. This will now make Africa a considerable market for businesses to enter into, for countries to trade with, and it could potentially start to rival and replace America as a destination for which countries want to do trade with. The more countries want to do trade, the more the economy grows and the flywheel continues. I'm personally going to be keeping my eye very closely on this trade war between Brazil and the United States. There are deadlines coming up rapidly. I want to see what the impact is going to be on the United States and on Brazil. This is going to help us have a roadmap, a canary in the coal mine to see how Africa should proceed. I hope every African president is paying attention to this, and I trust you out there, if you think this is a positive message, that you will share this and subscribe so that this message can go further. If you think I've missed anything in this story, please let me know in the comments. I read as much as I can, and it's really useful when people give me feedback. But if you have nothing to say, would it be too much for me to ask you to write the words Africa's time in the comments section? It just lets me know that you watched the video to the end, you enjoy my content, and you want me to continue. Thank you so much for watching today, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace. Keep moving.